Hi, I'm back! And I am very excited for this video. It's been a few months in the making, so I'm glad that I can finally share it. I'm bringing you along with me today to make some new characters. If you follow me on Instagram or TikTok, you've probably seen my latest obsession. Their names are Reuben and Fabian. I started designing them last October for an art challenge and, well, they've packed their bags, moved into my brain, and are indeed living rent-free. I've had OCs in the past, but this is different. These two have consumed me. I've done so many doodles. I've created their backstories, their friends, their family, a playlist. I've started writing their story. And so that I don't drive my friends away yapping to them about them anymore, I need to share them with someone. And that someone is you. So this isn't just me yapping about my boys, though there will be a lot of that. I will try to make this kind of informative too, in case you struggle to create OCs and want some tips. I'm no expert, but I've created a lot of little guys over the years, so I'd say that qualifies me to at least share what works for me. Preamble out of the way, let's go. Where do you get inspiration for characters? This is going to depend very much on you as an individual. There are 4 main ways that I create new characters. Taking inspiration from existing characters in media that I like, picking an interest, characteristic, or career and building the character out from that, being inspired by someone I met in real life, or creating a character for an existing story or setting. Generally, my characters are created one of those ways or through a combination. I'll give you a quick example of number 1 before we get into the others. I have a hero character named Althea, who was almost exclusively inspired by Sora from Kingdom Hearts. If you're not familiar, Sora is the super cheerful, upbeat, and loyal protagonist from the Kingdom Hearts games. Althea is also upbeat, optimistic, and a loyal friend who has to go on a quest to save her best friend from being corrupted by a dark influence. She was chosen by a mentor to become the fire-wielding guardian in a group of superheroes, but struggles with this because she has aspirations of becoming a famous singer and leaving her hometown someday. Hopefully from that brief description, you can see the similarities and differences between Thea and Sora. For 2 and 3, on the other hand, I can finally start talking about our first character today, Reuben. Reuben came into existence in my brain from 3 first and then 2. I was super lucky and got to go on a cruise ship vacation last year. It was magical, and I realized that I love ships. Which shouldn't really be surprising because I'm such a big fan of shipping, but that's a different story for another day. While I was on said ship, my friend and I loved listening to one of the pianists on board in the evenings. He was just one of those rare, super charismatic people that makes a lasting impact on you. A couple of months after I got back, I was still thinking about cruise ships, call it my new hyperfixation. I started looking up cruise ship careers for myself. Side note, I can't work on a cruise ship. I have a cat. In any case, in the process of researching jobs on board, I fell down a rabbit hole about crew cabins, rules, how long they're at sea, and how long they're back on land for. It was one of those things that just really fascinated me, and I thought, it'd be cool to write a story set on a cruise ship. So many possibilities for drama with that forced proximity. Does it feel weird to go back home when people's lives have kept moving while you've been at sea? Do you start to feel like a family on board? What if you hated a co-worker? Presumably you could change shifts, but you'd run into them at some point. What if you liked a co-worker? Most jobs don't let you have relationships with co-workers. Ooh. Naturally, being obsessed with love stories, that angle inspired me. When I started considering characters, I very quickly landed on having a pianist character. For his appearance, I actually reused a character concept design from ages ago, Cat Noir redesign I'd done. Why? Honestly, I just really liked the design and wanted to use it for my own story. We'll get into designing characters from the ground up when we move on to my next little guy, but I decided to have the ship he worked on leaving from the UK. I did decide that I wanted Reuben to be an American though, because the pianist we'd met was American. This immediately helped me to ask some questions about him. Okay, so Reuben is an American pianist working on a British cruise ship. Why did he decide to work on a British ship rather than an American one? Is he on an adventure or is he running away from something back home? Did he always want to be a cruise ship pianist, or did he originally want to be a famous singer, or maybe play as part of the orchestra for musicals on Broadway? Were his family against him doing music? How do they feel about him being so far from home? These are just a few of the questions that help me develop his character, and honestly, the more questions you can answer, the more you'll be able to flesh out your character, their friends, their family, and the world around them. Also, you definitely don't need to answer all of these immediately. I considered a lot of them over the course of months, and some of the answers have changed over time. That's the great thing about creating your own characters. Nothing is set in stone, and you can and should develop them as you go. So for a backstory, I settled on this, at least for now. Reuben comes from the seaside town of Cape May in New Jersey, from a fishing family. They didn't have a lot of money growing up, so he's never been on a cruise ship as a passenger. While his younger brother shares their dad's love of fishing, Reuben has been drawn to music since he was a child, and became a real theatre kid as he got older. He begged his parents to let him have piano lessons when he was a kid, but they couldn't afford it. Luckily for Reuben, one of the family friends knew a music teacher and managed to get him a good deal, so little Reuben could pursue his dreams. As he grew up, he had aspirations of becoming a concert pianist, and when the time came, he was determined to get the best education he could, regardless of the cost. He applied for and managed to get into the famous Juilliard in New York. Maybe he got a scholarship for the first year or something. I need to do more research on this, to be honest. But he worked 2 jobs to put himself through school. One job working as a bartender and the other in a bookstore. While he was at college, he met and fell in love with a flautist named Charlotte, who he would eventually propose to. They were together for 8 years in total. Charlotte was super ambitious, whereas Reuben began to realize he wasn't happy working as a concert pianist. He still loved to play, but his once exciting life in New York was becoming stifling. He and Charlotte began to argue more because he wasn't progressing as fast as she wanted, and eventually she called off the engagement. Reuben wanted to fight for their relationship, but Charlotte just felt they'd changed too much. They wanted different things. After she moved out, Reuben was devastated. He kind of lost his motivation for life. He would go to work, but he became kind of a hermit, to the point his friends and family were worried about it. He decided to pack up his life and move back with his parents in Cape May to help him recover from the depression. It felt like a huge step back to be back in his hometown. While New York had started to feel overwhelming, Cape May felt too quiet. He began researching other jobs and found that a cruise line was hiring musicians. The idea appealed to him. He could see the world and play music, and so that's how his journey into being a cruise ship pianist began. Let's jump to Fabian. So Reuben was created as a combination of an interest, a career idea, and I took some aspects from a real person who inspired me. I already had a pretty clear idea of him because of that, but I knew I wanted to create a love interest for him, but I had literally no thoughts on who that person would be initially. Fabian was created through method number 4, creating a character for an existing universe. Okay, admittedly it was a super new story idea, but because I'd done a bunch of research into cruise ships already, I had a pretty clear idea of the setting. A modern-day cruise ship sailing from the UK. I went back and forth on whether I wanted to make Reuben's love interest a guy or a girl, and even toyed with the idea of making them a passenger. Eventually though, I decided it made the most sense if they worked on the ship too. They'd have to be super rich and constantly on the cruise ship ideally to make the story I had in mind work. And while I didn't hate the idea, I found the crew dynamic more interesting. You see, at least from my understanding, different crew members have different privileges and can explore different parts of the ship in their downtime. Entertainers generally have more privileges than, say, bartenders. So I thought that could be an interesting dynamic and potential obstacle for them. I don't often create characters purely to be a love interest. That can be risky because you have the potential of making them just an object of desire rather than a person in their own right. Not to say you can't do this, but I wanted this character to feel as fleshed out as Reuben and to have his own life outside of their romance. I considered some of the things I'd already decided about the setting and about Reuben to give me the basic outline for Fabian. So the ship was sailing from the UK, so I decided to make Fabian British. I wanted him to be a foil to Reuben, so I decided that Fabian should come from a wealthy background. He has been on cruise ships as a passenger many times. That's what makes it a really bitter pill to swallow when he ends up working on one. This also helped me decide that I want him to be a spoiled brat who really hasn't worked much, which then led me to the question, why is he working then? What would his job be? So that he wouldn't be completely opposite to Reuben, I decided that Fabian also went to uni to study literature and he enjoys reading, a common interest for them to share later on. He didn't go to uni with any end goal in mind though, he just did it because his parents wanted him to, and he spent a lot of that time partying, which led me to think that maybe, even though he graduated years ago at this point, Fabian, I've decided, is 29 and Reuben is 35. He never really stopped partying, he just carried on with his parents' money. However, after he got into a car accident a year or so ago, possibly because he was driving under the influence, his parents have finally put their foot down and said they're cutting him off so that he can get his life together. They got him a decent apartment in London, but then left him to get on with sorting out his life. He's had a bunch of jobs in that time, I think, office jobs, barista jobs, and he has not held down a single one. He doesn't take work seriously and he feels his parents are being unfair. He's been fired or walked out many times. Now his parents are on the verge of basically disowning him. They love him and they want him to get his life together, but they're at their wits' end. This is where his older sister Lucille steps in. Lucille and Fabian have a complicated relationship. Honestly, there's a lot of drama there, but this is long enough, so I won't get into it in this video. But Lucille offers Fabian a lifeline. She has a good friend who works on the Astraeus cruise ship who is hiring bartenders with full training provided. Fabian has a little bartending experience from some of the jobs he took then walked out of, and Lucille's friend Dana offers to give Fabian a chance. That's how a very reluctant Fabian ends up on the same cruise ship as Reuben. I tried to give the dynamic a good balance. Reuben loves his job and the ship and feels very fortunate to be there, while Fabian resents it and thinks he's too good for it. Reuben has worked his way up while Fabian is used to having money and is dealing with basically being a normal person for the first time. It probably sounds like Fabian is the only one who would have anything to learn from Reuben, but there are some story elements I'm leaving out, and I promise Reuben will go on a journey of growth too. As you can see, I'm working on giving them multiple outfits, kind of like you do when you play The Sims. I find this helpful for a few reasons. It makes life way easier when I draw them in future because I have some outfits to choose from depending on the setting. It's also a good way to help me develop an idea of their sense of style. The way I personally do this is creating boards on Pinterest for each character and saving outfit inspiration or general things I think would just suit their vibe. Clothes can say a lot about your character's background, whether they like certain things, whether they want to stand out, whether they have money, and if they want people to know that they have money. For Reuben, I pictured him in some of those simple button-up shirts with the chunky stripes on that are in fashion lately. I also got inspired by a kind of 80s vibe, denim jean jackets and graphic tees. Because he's a theatre kid, I decided his favourite musical is Cats, so for his PJs I googled Cats merch and gave him a slightly worn version of a t-shirt he probably got when he was like 18 or something. I imagine maybe his family saved to take him to see it, or maybe Reuben himself saved up. He probably wore it all the time for a couple of years, but now it's been relegated to nightwear because the graphic on the front is peeling, and maybe he's been teased a lot since the Cats movie came out a few years ago. I think overall Reuben enjoys fashion, but he ultimately wears what makes him happy. For Fabian, I initially thought about making his wardrobe super sleek and bougie, and I think he does have some stuff like that. His formal wear, for example. I kind of feel like because he's kind of a lazy guy though, well, he probably gets dressed up for parties. Generally, he wears sweatpants, sneakers, and hoodies. However, they're probably expensive designer stuff. So he looks casual, but he's actually wearing an outfit that costs the price of the average person's monthly wage. I also gave him a watch that I assume is again more of a status symbol than an actual timepiece. I was inspired by some male celebrities who always seem to be wearing this kind of thing, but again, you can always see the sneakers are like Nike or Adidas. The last thing I did for this video was draw some different expressions. You've definitely seen those expression sheets of Disney characters. Even though I probably won't be animating these guys, I thought it would be a helpful little exercise to see what they look like when they're being more expressive. I highly recommend looking up expression sheets and templates on Pinterest for inspiration. It's another really good way to get to know your character and get used to drawing them consistently. You'll have an idea which expressions your character would make and which just feel wrong or out of character. For example, Reuben is not an arrogant guy, so I didn't draw him smirking or anything. That's not to say he will never use that facial expression, obviously, but drawing his little awkward smile definitely helped me see more of his vibe. So you have characters. You figured out their appearance, their background, where they're from, what they do. You can absolutely stop here, depending on what you're creating your characters for, but I'm extra, so I'll share some of the bonus ideas I have for developing them, or just to help you get excited or more invested in them. You might have already started a Pinterest board while designing them. I don't know why I'm promoting Pinterest so much in this video. Honestly, I hate how much AI is on there now. So if you prefer to use Miro, Milanote, a folder on your phone, or a literal physical scrapbook or folder, do whatever you get the most joy out of, but keep adding to it. Add pictures of their favourite albums or the places they'd like to travel. If they live in a fantasy world, you can save inspiration from fantasy books or movies. It can be text posts too. You can treat it as if your character themselves is putting it together, if it helps you get into their head more, or if it's just more fun. I don't know what the official name for these is, but if you look up character sheets, you can usually get these templates with fun prompts. Some of them have questions you can answer, others have drawing prompts. There are probably at least one or two that will appeal to you. These are mostly for fun, but they might make you think about aspects of your character that you hadn't considered yet. So if you look up character dialogue prompts or character interaction scenarios, you can find some fun ideas to draw or write little comics for your characters, or even some stories. I have a bunch of these saved for Reuben and Fabian. Nearly always Fabian saying something shocking and Reuben being flustered by it. This is another one that's just for fun for me, but it has helped me develop their dynamic too. This one is particularly good if you're feeling a bit art blocked or hit a wall with your development. Create them, play as them, build their perfect house, their childhood home, their tiny apartment they stayed in as a student. Use CC, use mods. I feel like most people probably do this anyway, and I don't even have to recommend it, but for me, building their homes in particular helps me get inside my character's head because I can see their environment. I can think about whether they're messy or neat, if they have a lot of belongings or prefer minimalism, the kinds of things they like to display. I started building the cruise ship on The Sims. That is a huge work in progress. For Reuben's cabin, he definitely has posters from musicals, but also photos from back home, of his friends and family, and lots of sheet music and books. Fabian, on the other hand, has to share a cabin with another bartender. He keeps most of his stuff in his trunk because he's kind of in denial that he'll be staying there long enough to warrant unpacking. He also has books though. Back in his old home, I gave him some football trophies and game consoles because I imagine those are some of the interests he likes to promote rather than his love of reading, which he might worry isn't cool. He cares a lot about appearances, obviously. See? Look how much I've learned about them from building their rooms in The Sims. It's totally legit research. For me, music is a huge source of inspiration for plot. I have a playlist for each of the boys, as well as a combined couple playlist that's more based on the overall story. Music is a big part of the story anyway, because Reuben is a pianist, so I put artists I thought he'd enjoy in his playlist, like Billy Joel, as well as songs that suit his personality. I do this here on YouTube, but you can use Spotify, or even make a physical CD if you like having physical media. Even though I actually don't love social media, I do like drawing silly posts from the perspectives of my characters. I like to think about what their username might be. Are their profiles public or private? Do they share selfies, travel photos, or pictures of their cats? Also, you can have other characters interact with them in the comments. Here are a couple of examples. There's honestly so much more I could tell you about these guys, their playlists, voice claims, friendship groups, but I've rambled at you enough for one day, and honestly, I'm out of footage. If you've made it this far, thank you so much for listening to me talk about my little guys. I hope some of the tips I've shared are helpful. Let me know if you want to see more videos with these two or with other characters in future. Most importantly, please talk to me about your OCs in the comments. I love hearing about other people's characters as much as I love talking about my own. Go grab a drink and a snack. If it's your birthday today, yes, you know who you are. Happy birthday. Thanks so much for watching, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one. Bye!